What's going on, world? Thank you so much for watching another episode of Insightful Principles. In today's content, I want to talk about the $100 trillion global economy and what has gotten us to this point. And I'm also going to talk about how China's GDP is actually going to surpass the US by 2030. I'm also going to go into details on what has caused that, what has been the result of them actually going to surpass us as an economic superpower when you think about the US as a whole. And I'm also going to talk about how stagflation has played a role on just economic growth as well as the contraction. If you all can do me a huge favor, if you can like, subscribe, and share this video, please hit that notification below so you can be notified every week when I drop content. So when it comes to the global economy, despite the stagflation talks, despite economic contraction, is being projected by the IMF, which is the International Monetary Fund. They actually are showing that by the end of 2022, the global economy is going to be at $104 trillion. That is a lot. And when I think about that, some of these graphs here that I have, and this is by Visual Capitalist, they're a financial infographic company where they take financial information and they put it in a nice, easy to see graph. You can kind of see here the United States, $25.3 trillion GDP, China, $19.9 trillion. You can kind of see India in that left-hand corner, $3.3 trillion. And then kind of towards the bottom, you can see those other countries as well amongst Europe and the Middle East. Now, when it comes to China specifically, I mentioned how by 2030, their gross domestic product, which is their economic output, so that's just the goods and services that they are producing within their society, is projected to actually pass the US. Now, the reason for this is because China is actually the largest exporter throughout the world. They export about $3.3 trillion of just goods and services from everything that you can think about, from consumer goods, data processing technologies, medical equipment, clothing. They literally have their hands in everything. And exports are simply goods that are being produced within a country that's being exported, being sent out to other countries. The US, on the other hand, they're the largest importer throughout the world. So that means goods that are actually coming into their country, they have to import a lot of goods that are produced amongst other countries. And the three largest categories of what we actually import the most is consumer goods, capital goods such as computers, semiconductors, and lastly, industrial supplies. Now, China, they are our biggest trading partner that we actually deal with the most amongst any other country. And the US actually, they're importing about $3.3 trillion. So it's ironic how China, they're exporting that same amount while we're importing that. So we definitely have to become more producers of our goods and services. I believe that's one of the reasons why they're going to surpass us from an economic output standpoint, because we don't produce a lot. We rely on a lot of other countries that produce our goods and services. And that's probably why there's been a lot of talks of more manufacturing and production from a semiconductor standpoint. I know there's some bills that are trying to be passed from that standpoint because we know that we get a lot of those different goods from China. So I definitely think from a geopolitical standpoint, when you think about it from just a cybersecurity standpoint, we have to produce more of our stuff here to be able to kind of reduce our risk. Now, another aspect of this graph is that America has been the largest economy since 1871. So they have been at the highest heights for a long time. And when I read a book, a recent read by Ray Dalio, The Changing World Order, Why Nations Succeed and Fail, he talks about how countries can only rule, they typically rule for only about 250 years, and then there tends to be a reset, a changing of the guard. And so far, when you look at since 1871, it's been about 153 years. So it's getting closer to that point, and we've seen these numbers of how their GDP is not that far from ours. I mean, we only have 25 trillion, they have 19, so they're sitting right there at the front door. And also within the book, Ray Dalio talks about typically within the 50 to 100 year span, you tend to see big economic, debt, and political cycles. And we've seen significant changes with our debt system. When you think about the things that happened with the Great Recession, we're dealing in a time where you have a Federal Reserve where their balance sheet is only expanding. When you think about, they have about 8 or 9 trillion on their balance sheet. And also another factor is we're also in a financial transition. When you think about Bitcoin, you think about crypto assets and just decentralization, there seems to be big changes that are happening, not just within the US, but just from a global perspective. So you can kind of see here, these are some of the largest economies throughout the world. You have, of course, the US, China, but also Japan is right behind China with 4.9 trillion. And then you have Germany and United Kingdom in those top 5 spots. And you can kind of see also those other countries like France, Canada, Italy, Brazil. They're also wanting to fight to try to get to the top and actually become one of the largest economies throughout the world. Now, another thing to keep in mind is that, with stagflation, it's simply inflation continues to rises and economic output starts to slow down. So I think that that's still going to continue to be the story for 2022, and that, it is interesting to see how there's still going to be a milestone of 104 trillion from a global economy standpoint by the end of this year of 2022, but also at the same time, there's a lot of debt in the system. So I definitely think that, it's great to see that the economy is still in some aspect. We're seeing that a lot of competition from a trading perspective with goods and services, with imports and exports. But I still think that with the contracting of the economy, we still are going to see volatility. And I definitely think with just prices, they're, still going to stay moderate, and it still increase here during the second half of the year. But I thank you all so much for watching this video. That wraps it up for this one. If you can all do me a huge favor, like, subscribe, and share this video. It doesn't cost anything to do so. I appreciate it when you take the time to do so. And I thank you all for your support. And thank you all for watching. And take care.